This week's parsha starts with a very interesting mitzvah of Eshes Yifas Torah. The Torah tells about someone who finds a woman in captivity when going out to war and feels attracted towards her. So the Torah seemingly allows him to take her and have relations with her, as long as there's a condition before that she'd have to sit for 30 days, shave her hair. That way, the more simple explanation is that way maybe hopefully he'll overcome his Yetzer Hara and then he won't take her, but nonetheless he does. If he decides to keep her after that, he's allowed to do so. The Orach Chaim and some of the other commentaries say that there is maybe a deeper hint in this mitzvah, and he says that when he says Ki Seitzei la-milchama alevecha, when you're going out to war, isn't only referring to a literal war, a physical war, but to the milchemes hayetzer, the war that a person constantly has with the Yetzer Hara. The Chovos HaLevavos, duties of the heart, says talks about how what a great war the milchemes hayetzer is, the fight with the Yetzer Hara. That he says he just tells a story about someone who once saw soldiers come back from war and they came back in victory and they were all proud of their victory, and he said, you know, the big battle is still ahead of you. And they were like, what do you mean? He said, the real battle is the battle of life. Life is a challenge, and we have a constant fight with the Yetzer Hara. So let's you overcome the Yetzer Hara. The Orach Chaim says that's why the pasuk says Ki Seitzei la-milchama. La-milchama is like not only to a war, but to the war, like the battle of life. So, and he says that what was captured is v'shavisa shivyo. Well, what has been captured that you found? He said, shavisa shivyo is you took back from the Yetzer Hara what he took from you. Meaning we were all born with a nature, with a good nature, and the Yetzer Hara, the way the Yetzer Hara works is that he starts out with something small. He gets a grip on us, and then slowly he pulls us down. We have a rule, Avera Geras Avera, which is also hinted in this week's parsha, that the Torah says if you'll take this Eshes Yifas Torah, you'll end up having a Ben Snua, a son that you'll hate, and he'll be going off to become a Ben Sora Amara, a rebellious son. One negative thing leads to another. So the Yetzer Hara took something that took part of ourselves, which was naturally good, and took that over. So what we have to do is to fight, to regain control over ourselves. And we have on the opposite side, the positive side is mitzvah, goeres mitzvah, and that's also mentioned in this week's parsha. If Torah talks about making a home, and if you'll have a home, then you'll get a field, you'll be able to make a fence on your roof, then you'll have other mitzvahs that involve the field. So also mitzvahs, one mitzvah goeres mitzvah, a good deed leads to another deed. But then he ends off and says, what is this thing that she's sitting in your house for 30 days? Sitting in your home for 30 days. It says the 30 days are 30 days, and it says and she cries. During those 30 days, she sits and cries over her father and mother. He says in this hint where we say it's hinting to the neshama, the soul, is the 30 days are the 30 days of the month of El. That these are 30 days that are especially designated to teshuvah, and this is a time where we should be crying and yearning over our desire to return to our Father, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Shari Tshuva, Rabbeinu Yonah, says that the idea of teshuvah is an amazing thing. It's one of the greatest gifts HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. And why is that? Because if we have the rule of Avera Geras Avera, that one negative thing leads to another, every time we do something negative, our hearts become more blocked with what we call timtum halev. Our hearts become blocked and less sensitive to spirituality. So we're really going in this negative direction, and that just causes us to be even less spiritual and even less likely to be awakened by anything positive. And that way we could just go lower and lower. And that's why teshuvah is an amazing gift that a person could just like make a U-turn and get out of this landslide he was in and be able to get back to himself. There's an idea that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says. We have this rule that I mentioned earlier, Velafum Tzara Agra, that the more a person toils, the more a person does, then the greater the reward is. The harder the mitzvah is, the greater the reward is. But he says something interesting. He says, what happens if originally something was very easy for me to do? It used to be very easy for me to get up for davening in the morning. And then, one time I, slept in a little, and then I get, as people do, they get used to it. And now it's much harder for me to get up. So if I woke up and I really overcame that challenge of coming to shul in the morning, would I get a great reward, because it was so hard for me? He says no, because that's not something that was naturally hard for me. I caused it to myself. Naturally, it was easy for me. I brought myself into this reality where right now it's hard for me. So I'm not going to be getting the extra credit for working hard. I have to do my own work to get back to where I originally was. And he says the same thing on the positive side. When we have something that's very hard for us now, something can be very hard for us to start a new thing, start a new learning, a new chavrusa, start if it's coming to davening more often, or anything we could do, anything we try to all do good things and awaken ourselves in the times of Elul. So now it could be a great change, especially if we've been social distancing for a very, very long time, and we might have given up some of our learning opportunities that we previously had, and we're trying to restart them. It could be very hard. But says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, when it gets, eventually we get used to it, it becomes routine to do good, to do these mitzvahs, and now it's easy for us. But since it started out being hard for us, you're going to get the reward every time, even when it's very easy for you. Every time you'll get that same reward as if just like the first time when it was so hard for you to start that. So we should really just take this amazing opportunity, the month of Elul, which we have, to do teshuvah, where things are naturally easier. It's naturally easier for us to connect to spirituality, to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and really make the most out of these days and be able to prepare ourselves for the day of judgment, for Rosh Hashanah. Thank you all.